How you doing, Paul?
Good.
I really, I watched over the rest of the video and discussion from Friday, I think it was. And yeah, Powerful is good. It's really beautiful. So yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that and other things. How are you doing, Francesca?
I'm doing great. I think I just needed to take a break on Friday. Everybody else was there, I see. So I've just spent the last 2 hours listening to your Friday discussion. And Paul, I just wanted to thank you along with everybody else. This is just brilliant. And it makes me realize how little of real history I learned in school. Not that I was avid learner anyway. I had teachers that wanted us to remember the dates of wars and when kings ascended the throne. And so I kind of turned off to that, but it was fascinating. And I feel very humble about how little I know. But anyway, I didn't quite finish it. People were discussing things, but I needed to get on for our discussion right now. But I had stopped sort of where Michelle was talking about, or people were talking about, how can we expand? And I was kind of thinking the same question. And so we'll see what, we'll get into that, I'm sure. So I'm doing fine. My cat is sitting here on my lap. I think he's come to expect these discussions.
He knows what's going on if you're sitting in front of your tablet and just talking.
Yeah, and just giving him all this divided attention, I guess I can say.
Fair enough.
Well, it's good that. What's your cat's name?
This one is Simon. He's 17 years old.
Oh, wow.
And he, like most cats, considers me a piece of warm furniture.
Well, hopefully Simon can get a little bit of the vibrational field that we're
I think he does. That's why he popped up.
Good. Hi, Leoma.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm here. Right.
Good. What is that silver ball? Sorry to be peeping around your house, but that is an intriguing piece of furniture.
Well, if I had more time, I would make up an interesting story about it, but it's just one of those exercise ball things that my sister used to sit on before she got so many broken bones she couldn't.
Oh, man.
And I still keep it around under the theory that it's going to help me with my shoulder stuff. But anyway, it's, I could come up with something much more interesting.
I think it might actually be the, somewhat larger dragon egg that you've been working with.
Okay. All right, there you go.
Perfect.
I knew there was a better explanation.
Hi, Lionel.
Hey there, Benny. Good to see you again. How's it going?
Good to see you. It's going well. Yeah.
All right. Wonderful. Yeah.
How are you doing?
An eclectic art behind you there.
Yeah, this is my dad described it as Benny brought his dorm room back into our house.
Right.
Yeah, totally. Makes sense. Funny. I'm good. I just I'm here in Vermont, and yesterday we had a beautiful, warm, sunny day. It was gorgeous out. And 3 of us went out for a long mountain bike ride.
Oh, good.
And it's only the second time I've been mountain biking. It's really fun and like engages your kinesthetic body, and you're solving problems mentally with it. So I found that I really liked it. But those who stayed home were like sitting around in lounge chairs, and my girlfriend Carla she's very pale, and she got burnt just like all of her shoulders, all of her forehead, all of her like chest, and her stomach. And so I just clipped a piece off of the aloe vera that I just picked up last week. It was just sliming her up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, nothing like fresh aloe for that. When I don't know if this will help either, but when I get poison oak, some of the best anti-itch stuff that I experienced was actually a CBD cream.
Yeah.
But two totally different skin reactions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's actually the itch and the pain receptors are the same nerves.
Oh, right. Yeah,
So,
just at different intensities and
yeah.
amplitudes.
So things that help tell those pain receptors you can relax now probably, are helping with the itch and would also probably help with the pain from the sunburn. In principle, see how it goes in testing.
Yes, report back.
Let's see, so we didn't get really check-ins yet from Nancy or Paul or Derek. Anybody?
I had a nice morning and early afternoon talking with Nightingale and Nathan about Africa-related projects. Pretty excited. It was a good conversation. I did promise my sister and her husband, Bob, have been sort of lobbying me they think we need a part 2 to Friday's talk since we didn't end up with time for discussion. I would love that if people are game. So I think that's me.
Good.
Nancy, yeah.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say I saw you emphatically encouraging Paul to pursue this. So, but I want to hear how you're doing and any reflections.
Any reflections is a bigger topic, and I have some for later. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm just, again, happy to be home. We actually had a little outdoor circle of neighbors, one of whom has hosted us and given us a home for a whole month a few weeks back. And, we were duly 6 feet apart and had to lift up our masks to drink the wine that we were drinking. And I've come up with a new term for that kind of meeting. I'm calling it a mask to mask meeting instead of face to face.
Okay, got it.
We're doing well, thanks.
And Derek, I don't think we've heard your check-in yet, if you want to share.
Things are going well, still busy. Still have people contacting me for tax, so still working. All good, all good.
Good.
Right. Well, sorry, I am attempting to multitask and I'm not that good at it anymore. So I will shortly, come on, paste, there we go. Come in with our general welcome to our discussion. So all of you are familiar with the layout of these, so I won't spend a lot of time other than to say welcome once again. I know that we all come here holding this intention that the conversation that we have today can really serve to make the world a better place, that we are acting in ways that will support and enrich the lives of other humans and the rest of the more than human world, and trying to hold that respect and consideration and love in our hearts as we go through what we talk about today. I have added one piece to the discussion agreements, and I wanted to see how people felt about it. So in addition to listening with deep respect, honoring diverse points of view, giving full attention, assuming best intentions of speakers, sharing honestly and authentically when we're speaking, and keeping stories that need to be kept confidential. Oh, and this is always the reminder, are we recording right now? Do we want to be recording? Derek, you're muted, but okay. So
yeah, we're recording. Yeah.
We're recording, so please do ask for a pause if you're realizing you're about to go into something that you want to be kept more personal. But this new piece that was suggested by a lot of folks in work that reconnects is to try to make sure that we leave a little silence after the speaker seems to be done talking, just so that we have time to make sure that they're really done, so that we have time to process the information coming in and really honor it. So that we create a feeling of spaciousness, that this is not a time when we want to be rushing through conversations and filling space. This is a time where we want to be acting with care and leaving space in case there's more that needs to happen. Does that sound right to everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, Benny is going to facilitate and lead us into our topic for today.
Thanks, Michelle. I am really excited to see what comes today through us. And I see that we have a couple new members of our circle here who just joined. But I think, why don't we have check in if you guys want to. Bob or Kendon, do either of you want to go first?
I'm really late. The last order I had is to make food. So I had no idea this was happening. So I just thought I'd sit in the background for comic relief. If something occurs, I can try to offer it. How's that?
That's great.
And for me, Kendon, life goes on wondrously, amazingly, particularly the last week or two. And Michelle, as someone who has his impulsive side, I will be mindful of pausing to allow for processing as part of our group commitment.
Yeah, I think that's a skill that we're all going to be continuing to notice and deepen. Yeah. Thank you, guys. So this was an idea that came up in our last discussions in difficult times from Francesca, I believe, brought it into the field. And we kind of danced around it a little bit, and there was a sense that it might need more of like an entire, hour and a half of like really, and some time for each of us to think about the question, what is our gift? And it emerged out of bringing the concept of a village to the discussion space, being that a village is a concept of how to participate in co-creation and co-support, mutual support. And part of this village-oriented co-creation participation space is that part of the village is that each of us, we acknowledge in each of us a unique gift of any sort that we share with each other and we give to the community as a way of following our will, our true will, or our passion, or our what we might call our greatest calling and our gift. And the gift that each of us individually shares is matched and mutually uplifted by other gifts that others in the village bring into a collective mutual support and upliftment. And so that's kind of the like pretty higher philosophical backdrop of why we're asking and diving into this discussion topic. But it also seems to be so timely, given that Novasutras as a whole is entering into a much more intentional, co-creative form and space where we're asking each of us to step into roles to carry forward the Novasutras events and furthering of the Novasutras movement. And so I guess not all of us may have been thinking about the question, what is our gift? Thoroughly, or with the intention guided towards specifically Novasutras. Maybe we've been thinking about it kind of at the larger scale of community. What is our gift to bring to the world, the human community, the human village, the more than human village? And I think that that's equally valid here, especially in these times of pause and pivotal times, that we're all feeling a sense of deeper connection and call to action. So maybe we can take a moment, let's say 2 minutes of meditation to really tap in, deepen ourselves into our bodies and the earth receiving our weight and welcoming us into where we are, our place on this beautiful planet. And in these 2 minutes, maybe go inside and ask yourself once more, what is my gift? What is my passion? And as a circle, what might our gift together be? What is our service here together? So I'll hand it over to Michelle to start.
Give us a starting bell and then a series of ending bells. Here we go.
Right. Welcome back. So, does anybody feel called to share something that came up for them in deliberating this question or in the 2 minutes we just had?
I'm just muting myself so I can join the conversation, be in it actively.
Okay. I saw Francesca raise your hand.
I've been wrestling with this. I mean, it was my suggestion, and I've been wanting to take it back for whatever reason. I'm not sure. Actually, maybe if this could just be edited out, what I have to say, I would appreciate it. You can turn the recording back on now.
I saw Bob and Nancy, and maybe, was that Lionel also? Did you want to join in? Well, I saw Bob's hand first, and then Nancy, and then Lionel, so we'll keep that stack for now.
Yeah, I wanted to say to Francesca that
I have a quick process question.
Okay.
Just name it. We don't need to address it right now. In agreeing that we will pause after someone has spoken, do we put our hand up right away and then pause, which is what I was trying to do? Do we agree on a certain amount of pause? I mean, there's just a little bit of questions about the stack keeping in relationship to that to work out another time. That's all.
Okay.
A couple of things came to mind during the meditation and listening to Francesca. One, I feel a lot of empathy with what you're talking about, Francesca, about finding yourself a little. One thing I have to say you do is you are specific about what's going on with you. It's as though I'm looking at somebody marking a trail so precisely. It's just easy to follow. It's really very good. And I really appreciate that. And I think your emotional honesty is wonderful. And it almost seems a shame it wasn't recorded. But when we had the 2 minutes, something just popped into my mind. It's from an astrology book, but I have Venus and Leo, and I forget what it is, 17 degrees or something. And the image in this thing called the Sabian symbols is a church choir singing together. And the image is togetherness. Now, I'll never sing in a church choir unless I'm really prompted, but I do think I have a very strong sense of wherever I am, I need to be part of that group as fully as I can. And I have a basic sensitivity about not wanting anyone left out. I don't know if that's a gift or just a neurosis or something, but no, I think it's my aim to always be someplace where it's inclusive. And I understand that sometimes people want to get down to business in some certain manners. In Paul's story, what he does, he's been studying and doing this for decades, for a long time. So it's not the kind of thing, even I have a general sense of like an outline of American history through Paul, a great deal. And usually I just defer to him. What am I going to say? That he's, every once in a while, I think I have a little insight, but I think really if I don't feel like the group I'm in is somehow together, I feel like that's partly on me. And that's what I think I bring. And I think sometimes it's through my humor, and that's just to kind of de-level things. So if people are too high up, they can just kind of relax a little bit and press restart if they have to. So.
That's beautiful. So I just want to pause and make sure, Nancy, you raised your hand in that stack question versus silence keeping after people contribute. Was that all you wanted to bring in, or did you want to offer a reflection following Francesca?
I do want to offer a reflection, but at this point, I think I'd rather follow after Lionel if you're good with that, Lionel.
I definitely am. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Lionel.
It's nice to be here with you again. And I really like how comfortable that chair you're sitting on looks. It's a really nice spot.
My neighbor gave it to me.
Oh, that's awesome. It's nice to be here with you all again. I'm thinking about the Novastras events and my gifts and my passions. And something that is exciting to me is to have a place where I can raise topics and discuss them with other people. So in other work that I'm doing, I'm building an organization that's structured as a nonprofit and called Go Gratis. And we're based out of New York City, where I lived prior to COVID-19. I'm out in Vermont now, and planning my escape permanently from New York City. But Gratis is focused on helping organizations make concrete changes towards environmental sustainability and social responsibility. And when I think about the principles of a Gaia and Ubuntu, I think they actually are the spiritual equivalents of the same two principles that my organization are based on. And what excites me about Novastras having self-organizing events is that like there can be a structure where I can reach out to like those, like you, my other like fellow people in this community, and we can put on events together. Like we could put on an event together. I could be like, okay, I'm really curious about like this particular aspect of social responsibility or environmental sustainability. I would love to have a discussion with smart, thoughtful, engaged people and put that on with the Novastras community, and then invite a bunch of people to it. And like for me, that would be like so cool to be able to invite a bunch of people from my life to participate in a discussion that's being hosted by Novastras on a topic that is going to really matter to, the work that I'm doing. And I think of that. So that possibility is like really exciting. And I see how, like I hadn't seen this until I don't even think today, but I just like, as I was preparing for this event, I was thinking, what we've created here is something that we can all use now to put together events, and there's like a special way that I can do that is really relevant and applicable in my life too. And I know, but like Paul, you're doing really interesting work and have a lot of interesting ideas, and so I just like a picture you instigating events as you already have. And Nancy, who brought me into this community, and introduced me to Michelle first, is of course developing like a big, beautiful body of work. And again, like in exactly the same way that getting reflection on ideas that I'm looking at for my own organization would be helpful. I could see the same being true for Nancy, and for anyone else that just has something cool that they're baking on and that they'd like to have a bunch of discussion around. So that's how I'm seeing these discussions right now. And I don't have like and I don't know, I don't think I answered the question like exactly and directly there. But I have a big kind of well of passion that I really can see expressing and engaging with you all around through this group and the events that we're hosting or that we're creating together.
I love your passion, Lionel, and your remarkable skill in helping to translate passion into practice, into practical outcomes that can have a real impact in the world. I want to respond at 3 levels. First, with Francesca, I'm so grateful for you naming those things. As I think I've mentioned, I also come from an alcoholic family, did years of adult children of alcoholics work, among other things, and have enormous gratitude for the gifts that in the end those experiences have given me, and see them, trust them in you. And at the same time, I'm struck by how many of the patterns are still in me. My experience in an orphanage, which was the first time I was ever around other children, and it was a very cruel place where children are very cruel to each other, has left me with a lifetime fear of small groups. And like many who become experts, study deeply, are articulate about the very things, the wounded healer and all that stuff, I hang out in this work and at the same time get really scared, have all kinds of issues of abandonment and stuff. And I'm back and forth. Like I said about last week, I apologized. I just suddenly was a no-show for a week. No explanation, no communication, just MIA. And I've done a lot of soul searching about my relationship to groups for the reasons I just said, but also more immediately, I'm really torn because the writing I'm trying to do requires time and a lot of time talking with other people. That has been gloriously available to me, and I'm incredibly grateful for it. Time processing it and translating it into usable forms is a different thing. And I was an only child. I love being by myself. That in itself isn't a problem, but pulling away from the group or even, and from individuals, from one-on-ones, is really, really confusing to me. And I'm part of 3 or 4 or 5 different groups that serve, for me, I'm blessed with the richness of this same need. So I wonder, well, what am I doing here? At another level, I really struggle with the question, if the primary value of a small group is people invest enough time and enough vulnerability, preparation, emotion, risk, conflict, recovery, that we become a richer and richer resource to each other and meet very real needs. How in the hell do you scale that? At most, you might try to replicate it. But what process of attraction and replication do you then engage in? And how many of such engagements with different groups do we need? And how much of such engagement is fundamental to effective action and decision making? So that some part of that needs to be in action groups. Or at what point do people say, God, I love talking with you, but after a while, it's like trying to make a meal out of cotton candy. I need to do something. I need to ground it in action, in a sense of efficacy. I've also had the experience the last 2 years since the TV series of extraordinary friendships springing up almost overnight. And at the same time, at times just going to hell, or a group that I cared about suddenly falling apart. I'm processing that this week and trying to sort out what to do about that, if anything. So on that note, I'll introduce, if I may now, 2 practical things. One of my dearest long-term friends, who is one of several dear long-term friends with whom I've been in non-communication for much of this past year as I got caught up in other things, is a man named Tim Bonneman. I've introduced some of you to him, from Cologne, Germany, lives in Silicon Valley, and is probably he is, without a question, one of the world's leading experts on group process done online in service of social change and democratic process. He maintains the largest database in the world called Participate DB of all of the emerging tools and processes and stories. And finally, yesterday, we hung out for 3 hours together in a mask-to-mask meeting, eating, drinking, catching up. And out of that, I talked about our group here and these questions. And one of the things we were talking about is his starting to surface the knowledge he has. So I said, well, if the group's up for it, would you like to hang out, do an hour lecture, not unlike what Paul did, and share, he said, maybe 12 of what he thinks are the most valuable tools online, informed as he always does by saying it's not about the tools. It's about the intentions, it's about the people, it's about the process. And almost any jerry-rigged tool will work if you're coming at it in the right way. And of course, the opposite is true as well. So I offer that as a gift to the group in our processing, and also the opportunity to meet a wonderful, wonderful human being. And then the last thing I'm going to mention now, but it's a much, much bigger conversation for me. Is there a way that this work can wrap within reach and my other work? I still have enormous feelings of having let everybody down, because having stirred up interest, I then didn't follow through. But now I have this new TV series that I'll start in the summer. I feel pretty damn clear. And I feel a need. I know like a half dozen people really interested in and knowledgeable and committed passionately about regenerative agriculture, better ways to do democracy, triple bottom line economics. Each of these core topics that we feel so passionately about, that I'd like to kind of create that group as like a team that would focus on that in conversations and help produce a month-long series of shows on that topic, starting with the work I've done, the climate coaching work with my Clover model, that is a self-reflective or co-reflective process of systematically asking ourselves who we are in relationship to this world, to this work, to our own spiritual arc, etc. And I'm now struck with one of my biggest emotional and ego challenges. I've talked too much. I talk too long. I put my work in the center of the group and all these other misgivings because the ego is at once the source of our creative part of the larger spiritual process where we take the risks, but it's also a constant battle with it, where it's helping and where it's getting in the way. And I'll end by saying my gratitude with the fact that in a few short weeks, you have managed to create a space where, scared as I am right now, I nonetheless feel safe in sharing all these things with you.
Mm. Yeah, I'm just wanted to thank you, Nancy, for what you shared, and maybe we can table for, in some way, the opportunity to have your friend give a teaching event, and we'll organize a cohort of uplifters to help make that happen, if that's something we're in agreement with. And I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads. So thank you. And I saw Paul.
I have I have two nieces have a birthday today, and we're doing a Zoom party in a few minutes, so I can't stay. That question about what is our essential thing, I find it a challenging question, but one thing it calls me to is my mom had this Jewish astrologer friend, and she insisted that I have a session with him. So she gave me that for my birthday. He turned out to be one of those people. This just really penetrating insight, obviously a lot of empathy. But he was showing me my chart. He was like, this is mostly what I do, and this is really extreme, your chart. So it was like these sort of two poles, everything clustered together opposite each other. And he said, so lucky you, what you got in the astrology, sort of hit the astrology jackpot, because you need to be really solitary to reflect and think, and then you need to really be social. And those, as far as I can tell, are sort of equally forceful drives in you that you're either going to satisfy or be unhappy. And he said, I don't, it's not obvious how you do that, but maybe higher education. And at the point when he did that, I had already kind of decided not to pursue an academic career, but it did give me pause for thought. I think I'm always kind of moving between those poles. My heart wants to leap into the world. The practical part of my mind that has thought through 100 things that would help immediately wants to get its hands on the world. Maybe what is partly my best self is constantly saying, no, this is okay because you're learning. And sure enough, whatever it is I'm doing, it is new layers of climate denial peel off. I didn't even know we're there. And suddenly they've sort of, it's like a whole coat of paint just fell off the wall, and I'm looking at it, and, oh, interesting. the last thing I'll say is that I think I'm changing, like, as we talk, in a kind of dramatic and disorienting way. I don't know what happened. Something about COVID-19, something about me, something about grief work. But there's a whole way of talking that doesn't work for me anymore. You know, if I can't, like, invite people, if I can't talk in a way that is affirming of how people feel about themselves and their value and the relevance of what they think and feel and would like in our common life, if it's not an invitation, if they aren't feeling affirmed, I don't want to speak. So anyhow, I felt like my talk on Friday kind of reflected that. Like, I just kept rethinking it. What do I want this to be? And what I wound up doing is I just kept throwing things out. Like, no, because I wasn't sure I could talk about those things in a way that was affirmative. So I don't know, that's probably not an answer to the question, but I think it's the best I can do.
I want to respond just briefly, if I could, Paul. I don't know if I can put it in words, but part of the power of what you said, the heart you brought to the knowledge that you have lived with for so long, the amount of pain that you feel and convey about the truths you have forced yourself to attend to out of love. And the effort then to find a way to share what must be shared about those truths. And yet in a way that affirms at the most profound level our power, our capacity to face up to those deeply together and not have to run from them, but not have to give in to them, is extraordinary. And what you're bringing is not only that passion, that courage for truth, that knowledge, the ability to pull it together, and an extraordinary power of language, but this discernment, this deep, hard-won discernment about what truths must be told no matter how painful, and how to tell them in ways that are redemptive, and let go everything else, your grand synthesizing brain, to subject yourself to that discipline and us to the benefit of the outcome of that, was just a sheer joy to experience. So thank you and bless you. And I hope I'm naming some of the gifts I see in you.
I just wanted to mention, Paul and I used to have a joke, quote unquote, that you should be in charge of the world. We'd read the news, we'd look at something would be on TV, and Paul would talk about it. I said, he says, yeah. I agree. What kind of grasp does a person need to deal with people truly on an individual level, but also on a level that reaches lots of people? So, and by the way, Paul's background is one of his mom's paintings. And this is one of Paul's photographs when he was doing surf photography. Yeah, that's,
wow.
He has a bunch of great stuff, actually, but art runs in your family very deep. But anyway.
I just want to point out how humble my ambitions are compared to Paul's. Paul wants to run the world. I simply want to shape how people think about the world. Everybody, everywhere.
Well, I'm definitely voting for Paul over Biden. I'll put it that way. So just so we're clear on that. But
So am I hearing a write-in candidacy thing going on here? Because Kendon.
Humor will be part of my response. And then with that, I'm very grateful for this topic and this opportunity. And in relation to Nancy and Paul in the last few minutes, all I want to do is change how all of us think about ourselves and feel about ourselves and are coming to know ourselves. So, you know, you can have the world. So, but there's a tendency to start with.
But only after you've done your job, then he gets it.
Well, I'm working, and anyway, there's a tendency to start with the shares in the beginning, and I will honor that by saying for 40 or so years since I first read Joseph Campbell, I've been trying to find my bliss and follow it. And the good news is I'm getting better and better at it, but it's a great enjoinder. And then my gratitude to you. There are overlapping villages, but for the past less than 2 years, more than a year, I have been in the process of becoming more because of you, us, than any other influence. And it's wondrous and wonderful. And then in terms of things Francesca and Nancy and Paul touched on, part of me has always been busy being the youngest this and the youngest that, you know, in my 30s and 40s. And I look back now and I can say, well, that wasn't my primary motive, but I sure got, you know, satisfaction out of it. So what is the gift? And there are a lot of ways of phrasing it. But I look at my kids, and I certainly did not, self-aggrandizement was not what shows up most strongly to me when I look at my children. So that's a cross-check on me. For a lifetime, I've been on the watch for possibility and positive possibilities for individuals. I'm very grateful for that. I'm good at it. And then it's not easy when you focus on yourself to sort out, you know, details of what are going on, but a second gift which relates to the first one. There's a delightful song by Stephen Sondheim, the title of which is Boy, Can That Boy Foxtrot? And boy, can I contemplate my navel. Wow, gee. But it's been very productive, I think. Oh, one other little touch on humor. So I can't be the youngest this or that anymore. I'm a geezer, but there are poster children. I have named myself a poster geezer. So, you know, I'm still managing with these little tidbits. But then recently, as all of you know, or all but one of you know, I've come upon this perspective of a major part of our brain that serves the purpose of life enhancement. And boy, oh boy, do I think we need that recognition. I think it's going to be very valuable. And then, and life enhancement it's a different. And so I wrote a paragraph maybe 2 hours ago, which I haven't reread yet, but it touches on the village. And so as part of my speaking to my gifts, I'm going to read it. And it's sort of, we'll see. I think it'll say what we want to. So this is talking about the limbic system or the allocortex. And the retitle of this draft, of this statement, which is a more focused statement than the previous one, is Allocortex, Implicit Self, Life Enhancement. And this paragraph reads, with any trait, nature and nurture play their part, but choice plays a part as well. For the male, late teenager, and young adult, competition, sports, the outdoors may dominate attention. Procreation and creation may be relatively more the focus of our females and our yin energies. But Olympic athletes demonstrate how critical practice is to develop skill. So in any individual, any ongoing focus on the process of life that follows choice by choice will usually reinforce the maintenance and development of life-enhancing choices, whatever the gender and age. This win, yes, perhaps inevitably, but who I am today and tomorrow, who are those to whom I am connected, and how are these choices resonating? Let this also be inevitably yes. The team and beyond, the audience, the values I manifest to the audience, the seventh generation, and it seems as though beyond question that emphasis within me will increase the chances of the immediate outcome I seek, more than not, in balance. And then there's the pause, and I guess I'll add that what distinguishes the implicit knowing of the allocortex in the best statement that I know of that's been made about it is that each event or moment is the positioning for the moment that will follow, for the action that will follow, that everything is in process in the allocortex, and that we need a consciousness of that. The cortex finds a definition, a moment, a conclusion, but we need to work as we live in recognizing that we are embodying a process, we are created, if you will, to find a process towards survival in life. And I think as we become more conscious of that, it will enhance who we all are and what we do.
I am being called by my house to join them. It's 3 hours later where I am. We're going to have dinner. I'm interested in the question of where we go from here. And I won't be able to participate fully in it. But I'll share that what I'm imagining is that right now we're sort of seeding the ground, to use a planting metaphor, and we're taking the kind of these gifts that we have, and we're sort of like scattering them among us. And I think from these conversations and our reflections on our skills, our strengths, our passions, our interests, various plants will grow within our community. And my what I'm looking forward to, and my sincere hope, is that with this event structure that we've created, we will be able to have a really consistent way of turning the little sprouts that come out from that germination process, and kind of, you know, giving them all the nutrients that they need to turn into bigger conversations that bear fruit for our community, and you know, put us in a thoughtful place and that change us together as a community towards this orientation of a Gaia and Ubuntu. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be with you all. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Lionel.
Anything else before I? You're welcome. Does anybody anything else before I depart? Okay. Fair.
I think
Okay.
Leoma,
I'd just like to, since you're leaving, I'd just like to respond that I'm very much welcoming your gift of how to turn a seed, I'm mixing metaphors, but seed into a different kind of a reality, and see the possibility of the small group might be a place of trust to help various seeds grow. And I just value your contribution to thinking about that. I feel like we're in a process with life asking that question, not a linear process, but an emergent one.
Yeah, totally.
And I want to just
appreciate
quickly build on that with, it helps, I think, you're in a position to do that, and Tim, to lay out some of the alternative structures that work for different purposes, and you know what works, and also the pitfalls around them. To the extent that we're gardening and not just in the woods where they grow themselves, we bring structures, and we bring the structures that encode a certain amount of knowledge over time about what tends to work and not. So to lay that out and be able to make conscious choices may help this process, as well as the intuitive flowing part within it.
And because
Yeah,
I can say
I appreciate that.
because I can say it briefly, I'll add the importance of my sharing with the Within Reach group last Wednesday, and how I'm now formulating my thinking and writing was huge, and it's an example of how important it can be to have villages.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah, I had a chance to say this to Paul already, but it's still ringing true for me now that some of the perspective that he shared with me through these conversations has changed the way that I'm thinking about this whole COVID crisis. And it's taken me deeper into understanding like the true human experience of it, which he has a gift right now, Paul does, in being connected to the real lived way that this health crisis is playing out, and is very real. And ideas like that, yeah, they can kind of change my trajectory. I know, I think I hear you saying the same thing, Kendon, that just like being part of some of these conversations actually can change your whole framing and lens. And yeah, that's part of the value in it. Okay, well, thank you, friends. Continue on.
Bye-bye.
is there any thoughts that are on the forefront of people's minds, or else I'm feeling called to share my reflection from myself? I've been on like I might have mentioned this once before, I've been on much of a soul searching pivotal moment in my life. And certainly finding or groups, conversations with people I never would have known even in my life have found me by complete serendipity. And it's really transformed how I am unfolding, watching my process develop. And one thing, and I guess this is a bit of a response to what Francesca mentioned about the concern that of the role and scale of Novasutras might be. That thought touched me because I think that each of us has the same question about ourselves and the work that we feel called to do, our passions, our sense of responsibility maybe, our yearning to be participatory givers. That is partially why we're all here, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. And that's definitely why I'm here. And I think that one of my gifts that has shown itself to me through working and being in groups such as this is that one of my gifts is dreaming. I'm a bit of a dreamer, which means that I will have, like, if there's a vision or a shared goal or a personal goal that I came up with, I just want to take it all the way. Like, how much more good, how many more different like tentacles might this vision grow to be even better than it may have first appeared, or do more than we thought it could have. That's the dreamer archetype or envisioner. That's like, oh, let's take this all the way. We can turn this community garden into we can turn this request for an orchard into a community garden and a social economic bridge between classes and people, and a way to give, uplifting after school care and just everything, like pile it on. Like, that's my one of my tendencies, and it's a gift to share, right? Just as much as being reflective of and questioning of, is this really something that feels powerful to me? And what does that mean about this thing that I'm questioning? That is also important because it balances, is in co-balance with the dreamer archetype. It's like a ground, like an anchor, like almost like the skeptical mentor, even, to hold a compass, maybe. And I see a lot a lot of potency in this field that we've created together, that has emerged from us coming together. And part of my recent few months of being on a soul search and being open to what comes, I have seen that serendipity, when you're open in that way, brings to you what wants to be brought and amplified in the world through each of us. And I'm seeing that here. And yeah, I feel like I don't want to take it too far down my own interpretation of what's happening here, but that's how I see one of my gifts to share here and with the world, and in what this collective is sharing with the world collectively.
I just want to, first of all, do a time check. So we're at 80 of 90 minutes if we were going to wrap up at 4:30. We can extend it longer, but I want to make sure that everybody who's on wants to do that. Is there anybody who needs to leave right at 4:30? Aside from the folks who already need to leave earlier. So it looks like we're okay to continue on a little bit. So, so I'll just leave that open. And since I have the mic, shall I go next? All right. So Benny, thank you for articulating that perspective on what's going on, and identifying your gifts and capacities as a dreamer, and as someone who can take the seed of a vision and help really allow that vision to unfold in a big way. And this, how many tentacles it can grow. I just have this image of, we're releasing a kraken somewhere. I don't have a problem with that, but and I think what Paul was describing, and some of where I get really challenged in doing things effectively, and I know this about myself, is that I have a very polarized approach to things. On the one hand, I tend to be and prefer to be big picture visions. I want, when I started coming up with the idea of Novastras, I'm like, well, what kind of an institution can change all of civilization and allow me to start a university and reach all over the world? And those were sort of the conditions that I was trying to address, and then came to this idea of, well, if we have people who come together around an agreed set of principles about really honoring nature, then we can build all of that together with that as its DNA, and that would produce a much better world outcome than what we currently are experiencing. And then there's this other part of me that is, God help me, a born bureaucrat. I mean, I look at all the details and I'm like, okay, this thing needs to happen and we need to figure this out and we need a timeline on this and here are all the details of how this works. And so I'm either like way too far over here or way too far down in the weeds. And that means the actual practicality of getting things done, not my strong suit. No. I can be there at the beginning stage and then I can help work out the details. But the doing it done and meeting deadlines and all of that, that's not the fun part. And honestly, even the details that I do get into, to me, that's not the fun part. And I feel like I'm losing the important pieces that I should be focusing on. Bob, in that circle with you and Paul and Christine, Christine had brought up this sort of question is, well, what is the thing that only you can do? What is your gift that is really unique and important, and the world needs you to do it? And I don't have a good way to articulate what that is. But I notice that because the details need to get handled and because I have competence in that area, I tend to just, well, I'll just take care of that and feel like I'm really doing a disservice to the bigger picture that I should be working on. I have not had any time for writing. I have not had any time for deeper thought. I have not had any time for engaging the really creative part of this process that inspired me to it in the first place. And so I'm feeling like, well, the only way out is through. If I can just contain all of those details and get them articulated and get them in a way that can be shared, then I can go back to the creative stuff. I can go back to producing the ideas and the content and the other pieces that I still have not had time to do, but are simmering in the background. But I'm looking at my to-do list and it's like, I am so far from that. And there are so many balls that keep getting dropped because I just can't. And that's just, it's this sliver under my fingernail that I can't get out. It's really uncomfortable. So that's where I am right now, and really feeling like I have not served the more important parts of what I should be working on effectively right now.
Well, what you're saying you're failing at is all it does, your failures humble me, let alone any of your successes. I mean, I really feel very kind of at odds with what am I can't remember, by the way, what was my gift in Christine's group? I can't remember anymore. So that's, yeah. I guess if I could do something, I'd just like to blow all the smoke away in public discourse. There's so much. I'll start talking to people, trying to make, I think, a reasonable point. And I find that I haven't gone far enough or deep enough to really grab their attention. I can't get past the initial defenses that people have. Just kind of slapping it away. It's like, well, I can't worry about that. And I kind of understand that. I would really wish that I had the gift to be more effective at reaching people that way, I suppose. it's not that I have the gift. It would be something I might aspire to. And there's so much knowledge in this group about how do you go about doing that. You know, it's very impressive. And I feel like I don't have anything to bring to that particular part of the party at all. Yeah.
Did you want to say something, Kendon?
Yes, a little something. So one possibility that I'm conscious of listening to what Michelle has said is that it may be that in following her unique path and process, she's exactly where she needs to be and should be. And then how can one know? But she's not terribly far off from there. She's doing what matters to her and doing it successfully. And, you know, second guessing, fine tuning, blah, blah. And then, for better or worse, my plan is to give her a call in the next 24 hours to chat a bit, because who knows, maybe it'll be useful, maybe not. But with the village, we are here because of Novastras. So ain't no chopped liver. Could it be worlds better? Could what any of us are doing be worlds better? But we're doing it, and we're doing it successfully.
I just want to comment on two things that, to you, Bob, the fact that we may need to learn more in order to exercise our gifts doesn't mean they're not gifts. A musician has to learn a great deal about music to express their talent as a musician, and that there is much to learn about how to support human processes and bring out the best in each other is, I think, one of the adjacent sources of the adjacent possible in this century. I think we're only starting to understand that individual tribes, individual peoples have known that and done parts of it at least quite well. And that's our resource to learning. But to really appreciate, it's not being good or bad people, it's developing the skills to express the goodness we have. And to you, Michelle, I'd like to say to all of us, actually, the other question always accompanying Christine's "What are your gifts?" is, what help do you need? And much of the village story is, how do our gifts complement each other? And what my husband always says is, the problem with the gift economy, you have to ask for what you need and you have to accept it. Otherwise, it's a really good kind of economy. It just has these two little tiny problems to it.
It caught my eye just now. I was gifted a little paper at the last Lucidity Festival I went to from a friend in the closing ceremony, and he just has like a little, it's a little thing he made that's like words about how to make your life your own festival, and one of the components is, be a space boss. Success is doing your best. If you are doing your best, you are succeeding. Get your heart centered, hustle on, and build your empire. Remember, absolutely everyone involved can benefit and mutually upward spiral. Leoma?
Don't really know what my gift is. But I'm wanting to find out by growing it with others. I mean, I know some things I've played a little with art, and I've got some storytelling capacity, which I haven't used much, but I know I'm a storyteller. And sometimes I can listen to a group and hear key points and bring them out. Practical way. Physically, that's not just going to be me. And it's also never been my passion, getting out there in the traditional activist. So I guess I'm doing more of an offering myself than a knowing at this point. I can have a vision of Novastras being in some way a hub. Where this small group has a certain process to it. As I said to Lionel, maybe it could be a place. Well, Nancy talked about a mastermind process where a group can help people incubate and work with where their passions are elsewhere. And there might be a way to be developing a template like the 12-step programs one. Only a template for not just activists, but for engagement in the world if we are, as Nancy says, trying to learn new way to be together for now. And I think this might be happening, trying to learn it fast enough so that we're not overtaken by the old way. You know, the 1% that has developed all the powers to try to, their particular short-sightedness. But this idea that there might be a way for Novastras to be useful without having to do it all. I don't think Novastras is destined to run the world as the world bureaucracy. I don't think Michelle even wants to run the world as the world bureaucracy. We can talk about details. But, so don't have much more to say right now.
Such an incredibly rich group we have here. For decades, I've said I'm a radical, not a revolutionary, because the root is the problem and the root has to change, not just go back to the way things used to be before. And one of my gifts, I feel, has been to be able to take the systemic view, and I think everything has led to this point where, as our system is crumbling, how can I presence the faults of that system so that we don't end up repeating them as we replace the roots? And then the second gift that I have felt blessed with, also for a long time, is I've had several friends at various points who all say the same thing without talking with each other. They see what I do with my life, and invariably they say, "Boy, your middle name must be Chaos, because you always seem to be at the center of planetary chaos." And that I feel that this other gift I want to presence is my ability to stay calm in even life and death situations, and to facilitate organization and bringing a group together and getting people on board and on track and out there doing good work. So I'm not necessarily the person on the front line, but I'm the support group in the back that's making sure everything is safe and everybody's working and everybody has a goal and has the tools they need. And that has shown up in many different ways throughout my life. And so, yeah, just that's what I tried to bring to this little gathering, was the facilitation piece, to be able to hold the space and keep it safe and let people open up. And that's what I see as my job in all of this, is to point out what we don't want to do again, and to hold the space for people to find their gifts and go out in the world and be good activists.
Thanks, Dick. Kendon, I saw you raise your hand.
Derek, this morning, Nancy and I and some others were, so to speak, well, one thing we were talking about was creative possibilities that can follow from being able to be at peace with chaos. So you implied that as part of your gift, and I wanted to make it a little bit more explicit.
Are you just calling it out, or you want me to say more about it?
What would you like to do? I didn't have a specific intent. It just seemed,
Okay.
I guess it seemed unfinished to me in terms of what you had said, yes.
More about it would be welcome. It's a very important notion.
Well, it's hard to articulate it without it sounding cold and callous and uncaring, but I really come from a place where I don't feel I'm the one doing the work. I feel I'm just a channel for what the universe wants to have happen. And so it's not for me to judge. It's not for me to say, oh my God, this is terrible. It's not for me to say, this is what I want. It's not really, in my opinion, what I want. It's what needs to be done. What is the energy of the universe pointing towards, pushing us towards. Yes, I can have some impact on it, but really the direction is not being set by me. And so by having that perspective, that's how I can stay calm in the middle of a hurricane, because I can't change what the hurricane's going to do or where it wants to go. That's not for me to decide, and it's not for me to get all worked up over and be frustrated that I wasn't able to stop the hurricane. I mean, that's not for me to do. So what is mine to do? I have seen the universe put me in particular situations and particular times for the very purpose of organizing a response. And so even it's happened outside the rules. I wasn't supposed to be where I was, and I wasn't supposed to be able to do what I was given to do. And so that just reaffirms for me, it's not about me. And so I think that's the piece that helps me just, sense the energy, feel the nudge, do what I feel called to do, because it's not me making that decision. This is what has to happen. I'm just a channel. I'm just a vessel that's being used.
Wow. Nancy.
Just a quick thought about that. I really, really deeply, deeply identify with what you just said, Derek. And I'm connecting it to the work Kendon is doing at a certain level that I keep encountering in terms of trying to articulate my sense of what it means to have meaning or guidance. I run up against two versions of the shared experience, and I'm getting where I can just name them and be okay with them, because in the end it actually doesn't matter so much which version you hold. It's the lived experience and the willingness to go with that. One that Kendon is getting better and better at naming is, what is it about the human brain and the human body and the human animal, the instinctual knowing in ourselves, in our relationship to nature, in part what all, at least mammals have, what all organisms have, and the parts of our brain that we don't access. Partly our brains are structured so it's not that easy to access them, perhaps, and partly we live in a culture that just doesn't go there. And there are other cultures that do go there. And so we have an access to wisdom that is, if you will, within our own beings. Physically, it's not outside, but we access such depths of knowing that are ancient that it feels in a way as if it's from outside or a deeper place or inner truth or whatever. At the same time, my lived experience as I see it is that I am part of a larger process that is working through me. And when I access those parts of my brain or body or health or open to possibility and risk, but from a point of view of compassion, not self-abandonment, miracles happen. Things happen in the external world that are different, unexpected, that it feels as if they would not have happened if there weren't these various consciousnesses coming together as part of some larger process, that we make choices about the extent to which we open to them, how much we follow what we're led to do in that, but also bringing our own creativity in it. We're an active part of the process. We're not only a channel, we're an engaged process. And I want to name it because I'll just say this very briefly, though it's a huge topic. And I think I mentioned it the other day, but honestly don't remember the context. So I apologize if I'm repeating myself. A culture, a society is held together by relationships, but it's held together by its sense of meaning, its shared sense of a meaning that allows people to take the actions that are genuinely beneficial to all affected by those. And then to articulate or manifest that meaning through ritual, dance, games, all kinds of ways. And we are a particularly word-driven culture, so the philosophic part of that work is especially important. And we have gotten by for the last few hundred years, mostly avoiding religious wars, by separating church and state, taking religion out of the main playing field for spirituality, and allowing not only pluralism, but consumerism to create the common religion for the culture. And we're now forced back to saying, you know, that is just not working. So can we find ways of putting meaning and words around and rituals around it that are healing and unifying, not divisive? And I feel that's one of the things Michelle has taken on and is manifesting in the efforts. We're all, in a way, trying to do that. And it's a global stretch, as my son points out. I think any young person would say, boy, are we part of a global culture. There's no getting away from. I mean, you find hip hop music everywhere. And hip hop music is often questioning the social norms and challenging them. And that is a global effort of the coming generations. So I just want to, I guess, acknowledge, recognize the power of what we're doing and our efforts to make sense for each of ourselves, and then be very generous, very, very generous in the sense we allow other people to make and share and value it, as so long as we land up in a place of healing and not harming.
And I'm cognizant of the time, but I want to give you a very concrete example of, it's not, like you were saying, Nancy, this is a nest of relationships. And I just want to presence that it's not just relationships with other people. It's relationships with the universe. And so it was 4 a.m. I heard this story talking to the two people involved. They were telling me this while we were looking at this scene that I'm going to describe here in just a moment. It was 4 a.m. on April 27th, Wednesday morning, 2011. This couple lives in a mobile home on a ridge top, 4 miles outside of a town in Alabama, population of 7,000. 4 a.m. in the morning, they sit up in bed, look at each other, and say, what was that? What woke us up? They couldn't figure out why they were both awake at the same time. They go open the door to the trailer, look out in the yard, silence. No chickens, no dogs, no wind, nothing. They go back to bed. 4:15, she sits up, gets out of bed, says, we have to go. He says, what do you mean we have to go? She says, we have to get out of here now. And she starts getting dressed. Now, he could have said, you're crazy, woman, go back to sleep. He didn't. He got up, they both got dressed, they got in the car, they drove a half mile down the ridge top to the volunteer fire station, turned the car around in the parking lot so they were looking back at their trailer just as the tornado picked up the trailer, carried it across the road, threw it down in 1,000 pieces. They would have been dead. She listened to that little nudge, that little voice in the back of her, in her heart that said, you got to go. And it was totally nonsensical. I mean, there's no way to explain how that could happen. And yet, connected to the universal energy and able to hear that quiet little voice. And so there again, there's the relationships are all around us. And how do we become present to what we're being nudged to do? Not told to do, not pushed to do, nudged to do.
In service of life.
Francesca?
I'm just so grateful for this discussion, especially where it's come to. Years ago, when I was going through the divorce from hell, I became part of an online group. This was before there was maybe even the World Wide Web. I don't know. Everything was by email. I know that. And we called ourselves the Wounded Healers. It was an outgrowth. We all had been part of the International Society for the Study of Traumatic Stress, and somehow came together. There were a psychiatrist, a couple psychologists, a couple nurses, and me. I was still a graduate student, and we were having the conversation in a way that we're having now, sort of recognizing that in our vulnerability and our openness to be trusting with one another, we were heading in the right direction, and that we were in some kind of alignment. And that's what I'm sensing here, is like we're all acknowledging, we're searching for meaning. We have a strong intuitive sense that we have something to bring to that, and we've come together. And I'm personally grateful because during this conversation, I've realized the gift that I've had forever and that I've been sidetracked from for probably about 30 years, which is I always knew what was next. If I was reading something, I knew what I needed to read next. There was a clear sense, even though I didn't know what it was, that I was on the road to understanding something and then finding my way to contribute. I got detoured mostly by a job that where I wasn't able to use my talents or my training, and I was constantly fighting against it. But in the process, I lost that sense of what was next. And you're all just reminding me of that sense that's always subversively been operating in the background, but I haven't been conscious of it. So I guess when I say I'm what did I call it? A collector of knowledge. Maybe that's what I was kind of meaning. I don't know what that means exactly, except that I think we're all on the same quest here from not that different perspectives. And it has to do with saving the world.
I feel like maybe I want to ask you if you resonate with the word intuition or intuitor.
Mm-hmm.
That might be a good descriptor that came up for me when you were sharing. And it's really beautiful. And yeah, it tied together, I think, a lot of what's come up from this collective we're participating in. I feel like the story of being sidetracked or being taken, letting yourself being taken from what you thought was your, or what you didn't realize was your gift, or the sensation of looking back, or even being in the middle of part of your life and feeling sidetracked or detoured is common to everyone. Like there's no one in the world who hasn't felt detoured, sidetracked, overwhelmingly, maybe even lost. That's part of everyone's experience.
Even stolen, enslaved, because when we speak of the loss of place, the loss of land, the loss of connection to nature, the gods of one's land and one's coherence in village and community, those things also resulted in the breaking up of those human relationships with each other, with with nature, with place, and the theft of one's connection with and trust in instinct and intuition, what is next. Because in most cases, you, at the very least, you were often denied the means to act upon it because your means have been taken from you. But then you deny control of your own life. At the very least, because the means of supporting yourself have been taken from you, you now have to give in to what others want you, insist that you do just to survive. And all these other intrusions and co-option have taken place. So it could also be said part of what we're doing here is valuing what was lost, that is still there. It is still present. We're just regaining access to it and then asking for a world structured so that it supports us in bringing out our best instead of preventing it.
Hendon?
I may have mentioned that I cry easily. um, am I still there? My face went off. Am I still being heard? No.
Yes.
We can hear you.
Okay. So going back to how Francesca began for us, one of my most important mountaintops, which I visited, I'll say 8 times, I don't know. We began with building a container of trust consciously with intent. And the second phase of that was sharing gaze. The first morning we were there after the first evening. And the first line of a song playing in the background as we moved from one to another, taking in the other person until we felt, or they seemed to feel, that we had experienced them fully, adequately, and then being beheld by the other person. And the first lines of the song in the background were, I opened the doors of my heart, the doors of my heart. I let you in. And I think that's been very much a part of the process we've been involved in, certainly today's coming together. And several of us explicitly, I guess most of us explicitly shared a part of ourselves that we weren't comfortable with, but we were comfortable enough to share it. And in that process of sharing it with you others, became more comfortable with it ourselves, and then to be a little, I don't know, tendentious, almost whatever, but became better able to create as a result. So that's all.
I've been struggling to remember a quote. I don't even know who it comes from anymore, but it's something like, whatever interferes or whatever distracts us or takes us off the path of our journey becomes the journey itself. Something like that. And so it's like not only integrating all that to get back on the path, but also to get back on the path, you know, but you take it with you.
So I
This
just
notion that Derek spoke of the universe in dialogue, even the distractions end up being part of what is needed of us. It grows us in the ways we don't even understand until later we suddenly find ourselves in a situation. Aha.
You're
Feeling like a sack of wheat in a red shirt I hear, but I was, when Derek was talking too, I thought the one tiny thing that I sometimes will say to people is there's more to life than coincidence. And I think that kind of people who are strictly material oriented, who think that it's a ball of mud hurtling through space by chance, and we're just by chance, by chance, by chance. Certainly I've had enough experiences that make me really think there's definitely something going on that I'm in, a part of. Sometimes I fear that I get too easily distracted. By the way, I was told once I had limbic ADHD, whatever that is. But you were talking about the limbic system, I think. It was. And I notice when I'm here, in the car, I do it too. Here, I tap my feet almost constantly. My body is restless and in motion. I mean, I think almost all of my life, I keep thinking, stop that so it can all go somewhere else. But it just seems almost inherent with me. I don't know what this means particularly, but I should listen to the universe. Maybe it'll tell me. But I always feel like so there's a part of me that's always a little distracted. You know, I feel like I can hone in on something pretty intently, but then that's maybe a little different issue than some of you have. But yeah, I know there's a part of something that has some meaning. It's and for some reason I seem content with that without being particularly more specific about it. I don't find it odd or weird that it should be a mystery to me. And I've had some pretty interesting experiences with that, but mostly when I was much younger. And then as you talked about getting kidnapped by a job to make a living, I had one really good work that I did, and it went under about 6 years. So I felt very much like I worked very hard for half a century, but most of it's really been, it's just money. So that's something I think I've missed, is a work that I really feel has meaning for most of my life. It's maybe it's the restlessness. Maybe I just need to get a job where I can still tap my toe. I don't know.
Be a drummer, hitting the bass drum.
Yeah, I have a nephew who's a drummer. His big hero is Keith Moon. I tried to talk him out of this. It's a horrifying example of how to live a life. But anyway, what do I know?
So we're past the top of the hour, and I'm feeling that we probably need to go ahead and close this out. I know there's always plenty more to say, and the intention is that we are going to keep having discussions like this. We're going to need to figure out the timing and the logistics of that, and hopefully that's these 4 sessions over the next 3 days of connecting with y'all and whoever wants to come along to try to talk about the different roles and the ways that producing events, that having events online like this can be more collaborative. So I think I'm going to go ahead and take us into the closing slides here. And then we can have a little bit more of a formal closeout. So part of the process, and one of the things that Lionel and I talked about today, is we've got these sort of 4 roles of the doing of the discussion. But then there's this other role, and Benny and I have been in conversation about what to call it, but for right now it's still sort of the instigator. which has the benefit of sounding a little conspiratorial, which I like. um, but we're wondering if there's another more organic term that we can use for that. But anyway, all of us, everybody on this call has amazing, brilliant ideas all the time. And I want to make sure that everybody feels utterly welcome to share those ideas and propose them. And I realized I should stop sharing this screen and just show you a different screen, which is where I've already started to capture a couple of things that came up today that Nancy had mentioned. Derek had put together a list, and I had put together a list from some earlier conversations. So all of that, all of those ideas that have been presented during these discussions, to the extent that we've been able to capture them, are still there. And soon, I will have a better way to gather those and make sure that they don't get lost and that they're there and available. But that will also be the starting process then, as people want to go into actually putting an event together of gathering a team, and that the person who comes up with the idea will get some help in finding the right team. So that will be part of what happens going forward. And we'll see how that plays out, because that's a piece that needs to be thought through, is that piece right at the beginning. Again, inviting people, especially as we have specific topics that you think that person might be really interested in that topic, will be really helpful. But also growing the base of people who can participate in this. And one thing that I recognize today is that, there are probably going to be some of these that we're going to want to confine to certain subsets of people that have been in process together. And so that those decisions about who to invite will be part of the role of primarily the scheduler, but possibly also the instigator about who belongs in this, and therefore where does it go, and how do we reach out to make sure that the people we want there are there. But also that some of these discussions really should be openings to help grow the movement overall, so that it's much more self-supporting. And that will be the role of these Novastras uplifters. And it will also, of course, continue to require some financial support to keep all of these tools going and keep some of us going as things go along. Again, lots of resources already there. I encourage you to use the search feature on the website and see some of the stuff that I've already written, and how much more I know I need to want to do, and that I really would love to have your written contributions as part of the body of work that's going on to novasutras.org as well. And then, of course, there are various social media outlets to get connected and share. So the things coming up most immediately are these uplifter trainings, one tomorrow at 12:30, 2 on Tuesday, and 1 on Wednesday. Then Thursday midday, there will be the next moon meditation. For those of you who haven't tried one of those yet, it's not that we focus a whole lot on the moon. That's just providing the timing and giving us a little guidance as to what kinds of, what are the ideas that the guided meditation will be built around. And those are largely just guided meditation with just a little bit of time for reflection afterward. And we may not start scheduling them until at the earliest Monday afternoon, but probably more like sometime after Wednesday or Thursday, but we will start figuring out figuring out what the schedule for our next discussions will be and getting those set up through the end of this week. So those will be coming soon, and keep looking for emails. Make sure that you're getting all of our emails. Sorry, Nancy. I'm trying to unmute you, but you're muted.
Thank you. A little while ago, you mentioned this being the first of 4 conversations occurring, one each day for the next, I guess, 3 more days. And I don't know anything about that, and I don't know how that relates, if at all, to this. So could you clarify that for me, please?
Sure. So no, what will start on Monday, and Benny's been test driving a little bit of it so far, but what will start on Monday is something that's really much more trainings, where we actually kind of go through what are the steps, what are the things you need to know to do these roles. And Lionel and I have been in some very deep discussion for a while about what are the ways that we can build a container of roles with various responsibilities that will make the most cooperative, collaborative process for getting an event done, and having something you know, that will have this kind of quality and will serve the people involved, and also serve the goals of growing Novasutras. So, and a lot of that will be, you know, very technical nuts and bolts. How do you handle stuff on Zoom? How do you set up stuff on the calendar? That's largely what these are going to be. But also, you know, of course, I know that you all are brilliant people, and I expect that the people who show up for the trainings will have ideas and things to contribute. And so we'll try to make sure that there's some space for that and see how that fits in. But these are going to be really focused on the practical, getting it done pieces for each of these roles, so that people are ready to start taking on, and the community then is really what is building and maintaining these events as much as possible. Kendon, you're still muted. I'm trying to unmute you. No.
Great.
Okay, thank you. So as an example, I became conscious looking at your list and resonating with it, that I could easily lead a session on what would be under the mental health topic, and or a discussion with our group. But what I would at the moment name it is whose lives have I changed and how? Related topic. But it's just an example of something I might bring to the discussions over the next few days about, is this what I should pursue, and how would I pursue it, although it's fairly clear to me.
Okay. So again, the thing that I've tried to jot that down, but the thing that will help the most right now would be if you can send me an email with that as a topic idea.
Sure.
And what we might do as part of these trainings, and I still haven't had the bandwidth to figure out how the first training is going to go. So that's going to be really interesting next, not quite 24 hours. But part of it will probably be to take some of these samples and see how far along we can get them, and actually walk through some scheduling, so that so get me that idea to the extent that you've got it developed via email, and hopefully we might just start to work with that as something that's coming up soon.
Can I jump in here for a second?
Yeah.
I just want to emphasize, underscore, and highlight that these trainings are not trainings so much as, I mean, they are trainings, but this is an empowerment vehicle.
Absolutely.
And I think that we all are here because we're deeply touched by this movement and this collective, and taking on these uplifter roles when we're called is what is needed right now. And it's a really beautiful, exciting, and empowering way to join in the breaking of the seed coat of Novastras, as we might think of it. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much. That really helped. It kind of broke it open for me. A tiny little other question. How long do you intend each session to be? Are they an hour and a half?
2 hours.
2 hours, thank you.
Well, and that's, that's the intention, subject to change depending on who shows up, what happens. But the aim is about 2 hours. Okay, so Benny, did you have a thing that you wanted to do as a closing round?
I've tried to give it thought, and I didn't, nothing really came deeply to me. I've always liked sharing a word quickly, like kind of just like, not quickly, but like sharing a word that resonates with each of us here. But maybe today we can just share either a word or a sound, or like a sound and an expression, or you can impersonate or depersonate yourself into an animal with a sound and an expression that captures how you have been touched by today's discussion. And I will start. I just feel like it's and then if no one raises, I'll just call on Dare, and you can pass it if you're not ready.
Not ready. Bob.
Not ready. No, I'm kidding. I'm not actually, but now give me a moment. Yeah, sorry. Must
I'll
be
just say
somebody
that
else.
I feel the light bubbling out of my broken heart.
Beautiful.
Oh.
And Leoma was ready? Well, I thought about trying to impersonate a honeybee, but I don't know if it would be convincing enough. So, I'm doing the little waggle 8 dance, and I'm buzzing like crazy. And I feel like I'm in a nice warm hive, and that's really great.
I feel like an ant, but I've gone into a block of cheese, so all you can see is the block of cheese. I'm sorry. Really sorry.
Could be voice.
You're not eating it fast enough. I do think it's appropriate that we not force everybody to do this. And so
Sure.
leave the space and then at a certain point, close the space. I
Yeah. If
value
Well,
that
then if
ritual
we're
too.
at that point, my overflowing heart, and I choose to share that my claimed spirit animals for years have been frog and hummingbird, and that I'm conscious they both function at interfaces. And that's what my mind's at. It hovers at interfaces.
Well, I'm feeling both kind of a surprisingly sense of confidence and serenity. And this is woo-hoo, 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 woo-hoo. Hopefully you recognize the owl that often shows up here.
The owl ended up being my spirit animal on a shamanic journey once. It's often associated with death, but I don't think that that's what it was meant to be with me. The image that comes to me now is something like this, becoming.
Well, thank you all for being your authentic selves today and sharing your gifts. And I look forward to the next time. Be well.
Be well.